Welcome in to Voice in the Kingdom. So glad that you've come alongside to see what the Lord is going to do with another episode on all the different podcast platforms. However you have downloaded and subscribed, we appreciate that. YouTube, if you're subscribing, if you haven't, please do that. It's one way to keep connected to what the Lord is doing through Voice in the Kingdom. There's currently a tent revival going on in Kentucky through our ministry. We're also putting up a well in Africa at the moment. So this media part of it is just one little thing that we have the opportunity to connect with other voices in the kingdom. And I'd love for you to follow us and like us on Facebook as well. Well, today I get the opportunity to bring in a couple of guys at the same time to talk about an event that's coming up, but also what the Lord is doing in each of their lives. Pastor Phillip Fields, I have had him on Voice in the Kingdom back in the Box 2 radio days, and so it's going to be great to reconnect with him. He is the lead pastor at Courageous Community Church. And then Kevin Koontz of Million Voices and also the co-founder of School of Awakening. Really excited to bring these guys on the program today. And how's it going, gentlemen?
So very glad to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Got the thumbs up. I like it. So we got to reconnect recently at the North Georgia Revival. And so it was an amazing thing to get to meet you guys in person. And of course, at that wonderful move of God that's been going on for 4 years in Dawsonville, Georgia. Always wonderful to be there. So thank you for taking time out today to be on Voice in the Kingdom.
It's an honor to be with you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, this is going to be good. We'll get in trouble or have fun, one of the two.
We're going to have to do probably a little bit of both. I like that part of it. Yeah. All right. So, hey, Pastor Phillip, let's start with you. What I love to do for guys coming on this program is just give an opportunity to whatever the Lord lays on your heart to share about your journey. Whether that's, the day you got saved or something recently or whatever that is that kind of gives us kind of an avenue to get toward what we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those guys that, it's like the horse you wouldn't bet on, but here I come, right? And so, it's interesting to me that the very first 15 years of my journey was with one of the fastest growing churches in the country. And it took a nosedive because the pastor basically said the Bible is not true. There are many ways to God. Before it was over with, the whole ministry, which was at the time a very large ministry, crashed. I crashed with it. And that sent me into a journey trying to really discover my purpose and what this thing was really all about. Before it was all said and done, what emerged from that was this healing ministry that the Lord gave us. And, we ran with that for a long time, but I always knew that the Lord had called me and assigned me to leaders.
Yeah. Wow.
And so when the pandemic hit, it was like, what are we going to do now? And so in the middle of all that, believe it or not, we started a church. And that's that's not in the typical seminary playbook, right? But we started,
global pandemic, start a church, yeah.
Right? When everybody is being threatened not to go to church is when you start the church, right?
That's it, man.
So it's not about heads, it's about hearts. And so we raise the thing up, and what emerges out of that is just this call to revival, reformation. And that's where Kevin comes into the picture, and he and his wife, they come alongside us, and we co-found this school together, and we really just start running after revival in our community. And so, it was like, it's like they say, you're just walking down the street one day thinking life is great, and then out of that comes a whole different life. And that's where we are right now. We're loving it. We're seeing great things happen, and it's been cool.
First of all, love the sound effects. That always adds a lot to a podcast. But it's interesting what the Lord is doing right now in the earth, in these little pockets of revival. And I've even called it this on the broadcast before, these old wells of revival being dug up by all these regional moves. It's not just one superstar guy anymore or one big area of the country influencing the rest of the United States. It's all these regional moves where the Lord's saying the same thing to a lot of people, and people are coming together over it, which amazing thing that we need. So I love your heart on that, and love that we're chasing after revival. And Kevin, I'm going to bring you in on this too, and have whatever the Lord lays on your heart to share about the journey to this point and where that brings us in this conversation.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, it's an honor to be with you. Thanks so much, Quincy.
Of course.
And I love that name too. Our son's name is Quinn.
Oh, cool. I don't
Yeah,
meet very many.
yeah, you don't. But it's after John Quincy Adams, and
Okay.
so who was the hellhound of abolition,
Woo.
and so we'll get to that in just a little bit. But just just to get to know a little bit about me, I'm actually a bivocational leader. I've been worship pastor, youth pastor in ministry right out of college, and so for the last 25 years have been in serving in ministry in some way, shape, form, and fashion, as well as also having a tent making job as well.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that we had the opportunity to do in ministry early on was be in radio, and had a really great moment with the Lord back in 2000, about 2002. I picked up a book called When Heaven Invades Earth. I have some author named Bill Johnson. You guys might know him. And it was a really transforming part of my life. And then the other book I picked up was a book by David Barton called Original Intent. And it really broke down the original intention of where our nation came from, the heritage, the biblical heritage and roots of our country, which just set a fire in my heart and my wife's as well. And so we went on to endeavor to start talking about those things on the radio, and it just became part of who we were and in our ministry. And so so we moved out to Georgia in 2008 with a heart for revival, and connected up with a revival church, and have just been going along doing life and loving God. My wife is part of ministry as well. And then 2020 happened. And we all found, as Americans as well as Christians, that we were asleep at the wheel, and that God wanted to do something. He wanted to awaken his bride to a beautiful move. And that's when Philip, of course, Philip and Darlene and I knew each other we've known each other for about a decade. But all of a sudden our paths just converged. And that's when the School of Awakening was birthed. And that's when we started, it's funny how it started was with a text chat called the Election Support Group in 2020. And we were supporting one another and texting one another, encouraging one another in the Lord and to love and good works, right?
I wonder how many people had a chat line named that across the country.
I'm sure there are many. But what we found in the middle of that was that God really wanted to do something special and awaken the hearts of Americans and awaken the church. And so we just dove in headfirst into the deep end with Philip and Darlena, and God's really brought some powerful leaders together, but not just leaders, not just something to say, but action steps. We've actually found a place where we can start doing something, and with a company of believers that are courageous and brave. And so we're just going after it. So that's kind of how we got here.
Man. Well, that's great. Well, so on that point though, so that ends up being the knock a lot of times, because as Christians, we've said a lot of things, even in the course of the decline that we are all talking about right now. We've said a lot of things, but the actionable steps, the things have not been done. So it's been easy for other sides of the aisle to say, well, you're not doing anything. You're just talking. So how does that play into, the event we're getting ready to talk about, 2022 Awakening and all of that that's coming in Georgia, is coming up in June. Kind of talk a little bit about how taking action and not just words plays into what we're going to be talking about with the event.
Yeah, Philip, you want to take the first part of that, and then I'll add a second part.
Yeah. So I think that the most important thing is that we have to eliminate passivity. And so passivity is a mindset. And so what comes with that mindset is that, well, that's the pastor's job, or that's the politician's job, or that's the business guy, whoever owns that business, that's his job or whatever. But really, when we talk about culture and we talk about the morality of our culture, nobody gets a pass. We all play a role in the morality of our culture. And so we have to, as Christians, we have to be outspoken. We have to use our voices. We have to take a stand on issues that affect our communities. And from my perspective, if we are not playing a role in our local church, in our local schools, in our local businesses, then we really can't say that we are like the first followers of Christ.
Right.
Because those dudes, they hit the ground running, and the world around them knew they were there, right? And so we got to eliminate passivity, and we got to take this posture of leaning in and doing things that the Lord is instructing us to do to win back our community.
Yeah, that's good. It starts at that level. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah. So one of the things that I love about what has happened in the environment of our School of Awakening is that we didn't just call it a school. We didn't just call it a class. It's actually an action class. So 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 what it's designed to do is to spur us on to love and good works. It's designed for us to take action. And I'll just give you just a couple of quick testimonies out of the school. But once we got into about the middle of our school year in both of our semesters that we did, one thing that happened was we taught a class I called Biblical Citizenship by a guy named Rick Green,
I know him very well.
Yeah, so he created that whole curriculum, which we went through, and right about the middle of that class, a light bulb went on for one of our students named Charlene, and I'm going to tell you what, she took the ball and ran. She goes, "I'm going to do this class." And she was like, "I know Constitution Day is coming up, so I'm going to the school and I'm going to read the Constitution to students because that's actually a state right that we get to do in Georgia. It's actually mandated. So I'm going to go to a public school and I'm going to read the Constitution." So, I mean, immediately an action step was taken. And then another thing that happened is we actually had a group of nurses that were in our group as well. And they created a support group for people who were struggling with COVID and tried to figure out ways to go to their homes to help them, to not only pray for them, but also figure out alternative ways to treat them, and then see miracles happen for them, get them resources. And then to see people jump behind that and say, "Hey, I want to help you be a resource for those people." So when I say when I see that action start taking place, that's when I know. And I really know that we're in the process of moving into this move of God. Like we're stepping right into the middle of it. We're not just saying it, we're doing it. So that's one of the things that I've really been encouraged about it. Yeah.
So you've already mentioned David Barton and Rick Green. So that's just wall builders all the way around. I had Rick Green on Voice in the Kingdom once a month while we were on the radio. He was very gracious and we got to talk to him a lot. So always love his perspective. And so Courageous Community Church, School of Awakening, now there's this event. And it's Awakening 2022. And it's in Fayetteville, Georgia. It's in June, the 10th and the 11th. We've got these dynamic guys coming together. Maybe you've heard of him. Mario Murillo, Andrew Walmack, John Graves, Bishop E.W. Jackson. So, I mean, this is a powerful lineup that people want to hear from because, again, regional moves of all of these things coming together and God kind of saying the same thing to a lot of people at the same time. And you're bringing everybody together in one place in June. So tell me about how that part of it came together out of, starting a church in the middle of a pandemic and a School of Awakening in the part of a pandemic. And now we've got a conference coming out of all that.
Well, it's interesting how that started is we go out to Fresno, California in the middle of the pandemic, when you're,
when they were locked down pretty much.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so we go to Fresno, California, where Mario Murillo is hosting this weekend thing. So it's me and our wives and another couple. And we're not sure, what are we getting into here? What's going to happen? But, immediately it feels like, this hall that we're in, this is like the seed of the third great awakening. And so we're just in this presence of the Lord that is so tangible. And you can just feel the energy in the room of what God is doing and what he's about to release in that room. And so it was in that moment that, we really, revival and reformation, the marriage of the two was birthed. Mario was talking about it. Kevin and Rachel actually got to spend time personally with Mario, and I'll let him share about that. But it was just this unbelievable empowerment, if you will, that came out of that. And we're looking at each other going, "Hey, someday, maybe some sort of way, we got to somehow launch this in our community." And so a year later, here we are, and it's about to happen, and it's almost unbelievable.
And now you said this conference was in California, and if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, one of you guys, which one of you went to Flashpoint recently?
Well, yeah, we both did. We
You both did.
we-
Okay, Gene
That's
Bailey,
awesome.
another good friend of the program. Love Gene.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, talk about this. I know, so this conference is coming together, and I love the three words: revive, reform, recover. Give us a little background on what that means and why it's important to this awakening.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's interesting. I actually like to reverse engineer this.
All right, I
Because,
love it. Let's go.
yeah, because when we take a look at our nation today, especially if you're watching the mainstream media, if you're watching legacy media, or maybe even streams, you're watching your feed come down on your Facebook page or your Instagram, and you're watching just an identity crisis in our nation. Whether that's who are we as Americans, or who are we in our gender, or who are we in our culture. Like there's such a cry to find out who our true identity is. And so the third one is about recovering our identity. Now, if we say, and our tagline is recovering our identity as one nation under God, right? And so, but first of all, we're going to have an identity swap. We got to find out, we got to understand our identity in Jesus, who we are according to what the Bible says, right? Who we are, who we've been created to be. So then I like to reverse it back to, well, if the next R is our reform, in order for us to actually see reformation in our country, our whole nation has had moments of reformation. Like we've had a reformation that happened, right after the the Civil War. Then right after the Revolutionary War, there was this reformation that happened. That if we're going to have true reformation, if we're going to see our culture change and that identity, the first place we've got to start is revival.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of, there's so many places in the nation where revival is just bubbling up. Yes. And so when we start taking a look at revival, especially in America, I mean, what preceded the Revolutionary War was a great awakening. Right? What preceded the Civil War was a great awakening. And there's a first great awakening and a second great awakening. And those awakenings were really, they were almost an agitation. Not for physical war, but there was a spiritual battle that was taking place. And I believe where we are now is that third great awakening, and where it's going to start is revival. And that's where we are. That's where we find ourselves, why we want to have revival and reformation and a recovering of our identity in Christ. It's going to start at that core revival. So that's where it's all coming from.
Amen. Well, I say it like this a lot. You can't figure out who you are until you realize whose you are.
Oh, that's a great word.
And so as we're discovering whose we are, the nation was founded that way. It was Benjamin Franklin, and Rick Green was the one that pointed this out to me. Benjamin Franklin, when they were about to everybody leave, they were done. They were not going to write this thing anymore. And the least religious among them, didn't mean he wasn't religious, just meant he was the least among them. He said, hold on a second. When we won this war that we weren't supposed to win, how did that happen? We prayed, right?
Yeah.
So they came together, and they didn't just do a thank you for bringing us together today. They had a flat out worship prayer service for hours.
They did.
And then they figured out the Constitution, and everybody ratified it, and let's go.
Yeah.
So what does that look like today? It looks like the church, not the people in the government offices, because we've tried to let them have it on both sides. Amen. So now it's time for churches to come together. And what it's looking like from this event, this 2022 Awakening in Fayetteville, Georgia, there's a lot of different churches that are already represented just in the lineup that we just talked about.
Well, and let's get it clear. This is not an event. It's a movement. Right.
Amen. Good.
We
That's
have
true.
to, almost to help people understand what we're doing, we refer to it as an event, but really this is a movement. This is something that God released for this hour to bring forth what has to happen in order for the streams to come together, in order for, the things that need to be restored and the things that have to be, changed. It's going to take all of us coming together right? And,
Yes.
and as we merge these streams of influence, and as we get the pastors, the politicians, the parents, we get, leaders and business folks all together, we start to recognize that each of us plays a role, but
Yes.
it's that coming together, which is the whole impetus behind 2022 awakening this weekend, is because we realize that we can only influence so many, but these other leaders who are coming
Mhm.
to us,
Right.
these guys are like air support for ground troops.
There you
Yeah.
go.
I mean, they're swarming in with your big planes and dropping some big bombs for us, and then we got to carry it on the local level. but
Amen.
but it's times like this where these rallies and this is, I know Kevin and I, we just couldn't talk about this enough when we were with Mario in Tulsa, how, when you're in an arena with 12,000 people who are all, pumped about what